All right. In this video, we are going to discuss inflation. So we are looking at how prices rise and fall. Why do prices rise and fall? How do we measure? That change in prices? And then we want to also understand why inflation is important. So what problems are caused by inflation? What are some fixes for it? So forth. So dive in. And we're looking at inflation. And inflation is defined as the percentage change in some price index over time. So it's the percentage change in prices. So we could use a percentage change in gasoline prices between a year ago and what is the price today. And if we figured out what that is in percentage terms, that would be what we call the inflation rate for gasoline. So for our concern, though, we want to know what is the inflation for all prices. So in micro, when we look at supply and demand, we focus on quantity or production. That's what we define as GDP. But now we want to understand some corresponding price level that goes along with that, or a price level that captures some general broad aspect of how all prices move together over time, or a broader range of prices move together. Okay, so we'll go back to our percentage change formula and define inflation, which we denote Greek letter pi. So just like 3.14, but to economists it means inflation. So pi at time t, so we'll go through an example of what that means, is equal to the price level today. So the price is at time t minus the price level at what it was a year ago or however long ago that we're looking at, divided by that old price level. And then we multiply by 100 to get it into a percentage. Okay, so for example, if we were looking at gasoline prices, if gas today, so I'll just say gas at time t, is equal to, we'll call it $3.29, and gasoline 6 months ago, so an earlier time, t minus 1, was equal to, we'll say, $3.09. Then to find inflation for the price of gasoline, or how much gasoline has risen or fallen between 6 months ago and today, we just plug it into this formula. So here, the inflation rate for gasoline today is going to be equal to $3.29 minus what it was 6 months ago, $3.09, divided by what it was 6 months ago, $3.09, and then we multiply by 100. Let me grab my calculator. And that works out to, so this is 0.2 divided by 3.09. Works out to, we'll multiply it by 100, and that equals approximately 6.5%. Or what this is saying is that the price of gasoline in 6 months rose 6.5%. So notice how inflation can be positive if prices are going up, or inflation can be negative if prices fall. So if what the price was in the past is bigger than what it is today, this will be negative, so inflation can be negative. We call that deflation. So if prices are going up, inflation is positive. If prices are going down, we call that deflation, or inflation has a negative value attached to it. Okay, so what we want to understand is we want to understand how does this affect prices in a broadest sense. So we already discussed one measure of prices, and that was the GDP deflator. So the GDP deflator is using everything that's produced in a country in a given year, and it's calculating some price level. So we're weighting it by how much we produce and the values, so forth, and it's going through and it's giving us some index number, right? 100 being the base year, or saying that prices were 100% of what they were in the base year. And then if it's bigger than 100, we know prices were higher than they were in the base year. If it's less than 100, prices were lower than they were in the base year. Okay? But the GDP deflator isn't the best measure of inflation for, let's say, consumers. And the reason being is that we produce a lot of stuff that consumers or that you don't care about. For example, F-16s are going to be included in the GDP deflator. So the US produces F-16s and aircraft carriers, right? So those are going to be included in the GDP deflator price index. However, does anybody have an F-16 or an aircraft carrier in their backyard? And I'm guessing you probably don't. I'm hoping you don't. Otherwise, if the government might come and find you, right? So it's including stuff that we just don't really care about. It's going to include stuff that we honestly don't care about because we don't purchase it. So I don't care what the price of an F-16 is or an aircraft carrier is when I'm calculating my budget. However, I do care about the price of gasoline. I care about the price of food. I care about the price of clothes and electronics and a vehicle. Okay, so there are things that I do care about, right? That's going to be specific components of the GDP deflator, but we're going to tailor it towards measuring at what are the prices that consumers are paying, or how fast are prices rising for consumers overall according to their budget. Okay, and to calculate that, we use what is called the Consumer Price Index. So the Consumer Price Index, or we abbreviate it CPI, is equal to, it's basically measuring a market basket of goods that consumers purchase in a year, and it's looking at that price level. So it's looking at prices from a basket of goods consumed by the average family of four. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, to get a good sense of what we mean by the Consumer Price Index or what we mean by inflation, let me give you an example. So in 1994, there was a movie that came out. It was a very popular movie, and I was in 4th grade at the time. So I went to see that movie with my uncle. So my uncle took me to see the movie. So what did we need? We probably bought 2 movie tickets and maybe a small popcorn and a small Coke. Okay, so we calculated 2 movie tickets, 1 popcorn, and 1 Coke. Okay, in 2011, that same movie was re-released to theaters. So since my wife and I were both very fond of the movie, we thought it would be fun to go see the movie again in theaters. So in 2011, I took my wife to see the exact same movie that came out in 1994, and what did we buy? We bought 2 movie tickets, 1 for me, 1 for my wife. We bought a small popcorn, and we bought a small Coke. Okay. Now, if you had to guess, what would you say? What year did it cost us more? And you're obviously going to say, 2011 cost you a lot more than it did in 1994. Okay. And that's what we mean by inflation. Really, the movie hadn't changed at all between 1994 and 2011. Yeah, it was maybe a little bit more crisp because it was high definition as compared to not, and it had surround sound. Okay. But it was the exact same movie. fundamentally, a small popcorn is still a small popcorn, and a small Coca-Cola is still a small Coca-Cola, and it doesn't matter how far in time we look, it's still the same thing, okay? But in 1994, it cost us a lot less to go see that movie with a small popcorn and Coke than it did in 2011, okay? Or what that means is that the purchasing power of the dollar changes with inflation. So in 1994, a dollar stretched a lot more than it does today. Okay, a dollar in 1994, let's say $5 in 1994, will get you 2 movie tickets in 1994. However, today, $5 doesn't even get you 1 movie ticket. So that $5, the purchasing power of that $5 has declined since 1994 because of inflation, or prices have risen. Okay, and that's why we want to calculate how does prices for the average family of 4 rise or fall. The movie, by the way, was The Lion King. So my wife and I both really like The Lion King. Okay, so we want to go through, we want to figure out how much have prices risen between 1994 and today? Or how much have prices risen between 2012 and 2013, or 2013 and 2014? Or maybe we want to look at long stretches. How far have prices risen by over 50 years? And we can do that by using the price index, or the CPI, and calculating the percentage change in our CPI. And that's going to give us inflation. Or how much the purchasing power of an average consumer's dollar has changed over the years. Okay, so how do we calculate the CPI? Okay, so what we do is we're going to take a basket of goods and services consumed by the average family of 4, and we're going to calculate this throughout different years. Okay, so let's go through an example. So let's go 1994. Let's say that the only thing that people buy in 1994 is 2 movie tickets, a small popcorn, and a small Coke. Okay, so we have movie tickets, popcorn, and a Coke. In 1994, let's say movie tickets cost $2.50 each. Popcorn cost $1.50, and a small Coke cost $1. In 2011, 2 movie tickets cost, well, 1 movie ticket per each cost about, we'll say, $7.50. Popcorn cost around $3, and Coke cost around $2.50. Okay, so here's how prices have changed, and we want to calculate what is the average percentage change in prices across all of these 3 different goods. Okay, to do that, we calculate what is the value of this market basket. So we're going to find out the value of the basket, or basically, if I went and I rang this up, how much is that dollar amount that's on the receipt? That's the cost of this basket. 2 movie tickets, a popcorn, and a Coke. Okay, so we look at the basket cost. Okay, and if we look at the basket cost, that's going to be 2 movie tickets. So in 1994, $2.50 plus $2.50 is $5, plus 1 popcorn is $6.50, plus 1 Coke is $7.50. So in 1994, my uncle paid about $7.50 for us to go see The Lion King with a popcorn and a Coke. In 2011, I had to buy 2 movie tickets at $7.50 each, so that's $15. Plus a popcorn was $3, so we're at $18. Plus a Coke, which is $2.50, so we're at $20.50. Okay, so overall, this basket has changed from $7.50 to $20.50 over these, 16, 17 years. Okay, and that's what we want to calculate when we're looking at inflation. It's the same movie, the same popcorn, the same Coke, but the cost has gone up tremendously. Okay, so to calculate the CPI, we pick a base year. So just like we did with real GDP, we pick a base year. So in this case, let's say 1994 is the base year. So I'm going to put a small b next to that to say it's the base year. Okay, so to calculate the CPI is going to be equal to the basket cost in year T, whatever year we're looking at. So the CPI in year T is equal to the basket cost in year T divided by the basket cost in the base year. And then we multiply by 100 to get it into an index. Okay? So we're going to take the basket cost in whatever year we're looking at, divided by the basket cost in the base year, times 100, and that's going to give us the consumer price index for that year. Okay, so in this case, if we want to find the CPI in 1994, that's going to be equal to the basket cost in 1994, $7.50, divided by the basket cost in the base year, which we said was 1994, and that's $7.50 as well. And then we multiply that by 100, and that gets us, 100. So 750 over 750 is 1, times 100 gets us 100. So just like with the GDP deflator, the CPI will always equal 100 in the base year. It's always going to happen. So you can identify what year is the base year simply by looking at the CPI. When was it equal to 100? Okay. For the next example, we want to find the CPI in 2011. Okay, that's going to be equal to the basket cost in 2011, $20.50, over the basket cost in the base year, which is 1994, $7.50. Multiply that by 100, and we come up with $273.33. Okay, so that's saying that we look at how far this has risen, and the CPI rose from 100 in 1994 to 273.33 in 2011. Finally, to calculate inflation, we just take the percentage change of the CPI. So if we want to find total inflation, what was overall inflation between 1994 and 2011? We take the percentage change in prices between 1994 and 2011. So inflation between 1994 to 2011 is equal to the most current price, 273.33, minus the CPI in the past, 100, divided by the CPI in the past, 100, and then we multiply it by 100. Those two things cancel out. 273.33 minus 100 equals 173.33%. So an inflation rate of 100% means prices have doubled. Prices have almost tripled between 1994 and 2011 according to this price system that we have. 2 movie tickets, 1 popcorn, and 1 Coke. Okay, and we can see that here. Movie tickets cost 3 times as much. Popcorn costs twice as much. A Coke costs just a little over as, 1.5 times more. Okay, So we're taking an average weight and it comes up to 173.33. Okay? If we wanted to know, so this is over 17 years, if we want to know what was the average price change over those 17 years per year, so how much did the average movie ticket increase in price by year, we would take this total number that we have over 17 years and divide it by the number of years that we have, which is 17. So if we take 173.33 over 17, that gives us, it's just going to be a little over 10% a year. So that equals 10.20% per year on average. So overall, movie tickets went up by approximately 10.2% per year between 1994 and 2011, or for a total overall percentage increase of 173.33. Okay? What we do with the CPI is we take not only this, we take these three things, but we do it for a whole basket of goods. So they take about 8,000 goods across 38 geographic locations, and they look at the prices of those things every month, and they calculate the CPI. Okay, so overall, we're looking at a large variety of goods because the average family of four consumes a large variety of goods. And what that's telling us is, what is the average price increase for that family? All right, let's erase this. All right, the last thing that we want to discuss is we want to discuss, why do we care? So why do we care about inflation? Or what are some problems that are caused by inflation? Okay. Well, there's a variety of them. The first one is what we call shoe leather costs. Or what we mean by that is that people's behavior are going to change because prices change. So as prices rise or fall for different goods, we're going to change our behavior and our spending patterns according to those prices. So just like if the price of Pepsi goes up, you might buy less Pepsi and buy more Coke instead, right? You're changing your behavior. Or if prices go up overall, you're going to change your behavior. Maybe it's going to influence how much you save versus how much you spend. So some of those decisions are going to cause your change in behavior. And that's what we associate with shoe leather costs. So it's changes in behavior. Or typically what we mean by shoe leather costs is that if inflation was very rapid, people would run to the bank to get out of their money, because if money is just sitting in a bank and it's not collecting interest, or it's sitting under your bed not collecting interest, it's going to be eaten away because prices go up. So if a Coca-Cola costs $100, right? Well, you can't afford a Coke, so you want to buy Coke while it's cheap instead of while it gets expensive. So you'd buy now rather than in the future for Coca-Cola with the money under your bed. So as people ran to the banks to collect their money, they would have to run to the bank more often to get money, and they would wear out their shoes, so they'd have to have shoe leather costs for the replacement of their shoe soles. And that's what we mean by shoe leather costs. Okay? Second cost is what we call money illusion. And what we mean by money illusion is that we may think that our wages are rising, but they're just going up because average costs have gone up as well. So the money illusion is nominal wages may go up, but real wages remain the same. Or what we mean by nominal wages is what's the dollar amount that you're paid. So just like nominal GDP, it's in nominal dollars. So I make $20 a year, okay? Well, real wages is how much can that $20 buy you in goods and services? Okay, so, well, $20 a year today isn't going to buy me anything. But if I go back 150 years, $20 a year maybe provide me some, at least, maybe not a great quality of life, but some sort of quality of life, because $20 could be spread out. I could buy dinner for $1 or less than $1, okay, which I can't do today. So even though my nominal wages may go up every year, my real wage may remain the same. And so people get the illusion that their purchasing power goes up because their nominal wages are going up. But what's actually happening is that even though their nominal wages are going up, the prices of the things that they buy are going up as well. And that means that your purchasing power of your wage, the real wage, has remained the same or maybe declined. Okay, so even though it looks like we're making more money in nominal terms, what we can buy with that money has remained constant, and we call that the money illusion. Okay, the third one reflects more cost towards businesses. We call them menu costs. Okay, so menu costs are typically like, so if you're a restaurant, if you print out a menu and then prices go up, so you have to charge more, you're going to have to print out a new menu. And so printing out menus can be costly, or cost you some dollar amount to print out new menus when you change your price. And that's what we associate with menu costs, is changing prices can be costly. The fourth one is uncertainty about future prices. And this can change our behavior in really unpredictable ways. So if we're really uncertain about what the price of, I don't know, a phone is going to be in a year, or a computer, we might be more motivated to buy it today, even though after that year has passed, we should have bought it a year from now, okay? Or maybe it will make me decide to, well, I can't retire because I'm afraid that future prices are going to be too high, so I'm going to have to keep on working, okay? So it's going to alter our decisions a little bit more so than shoe leather costs, which are just changes in my behavior. Uncertainty in future prices can cause changes in my behavior that maybe are optimal after the future has occurred, okay? And this is going to affect both buyers and sellers. So if you own a restaurant and you're uncertain about what the price of rice is going to be in the future, you may decide to buy a lot more rice today. And then once the future gets here and we see the price, it's like, oh, well, I should have waited to buy that rice instead of buying it all a year ago. Okay, the fifth one involves price confusion. And price confusion is based on the fact that if supply and demand changes, prices rise or fall. And I take that information, so if I go to the grocery store and I see that all prices remain constant except the price of milk, that tells me something important about the opportunity cost of buying milk or buying other goods. Or it tells me important things about what has happened in the market for milk. So if supply and demand determine the price and only the price of milk is moving, I'm not confused about what's going on there. So the opportunity cost of a gallon of milk is whatever else it is. However, with inflation, if I go to the grocery store and all prices are going up or going down and all of them are moving, it's really hard to differentiate and detangle what's going on in the market for milk. What's the opportunity cost for a gallon of milk? Is it because there was a freeze in Florida? Is it because that cows tipped over from some disease and they died? Is it because people started buying more milk? We don't know what's causing that price rise with inflation. Okay, it's specifically if it's not just the price of milk moving, but all other prices as well. As I get confused about, I may decide to put too much weight on the price of milk going up in terms of what's going on in the market for milk, where overall all prices have gone up by the same percentage. Okay, so price confusion. It makes it harder to differentiate what's going on in each market when I go to the grocery store, right? Because all I need is the price of a good, and that tells me whether I should buy it because I know how much value I place on it. But if all prices are moving and there's a lot of noise with that, it gets me confused about what's going on and whether I should buy milk or not. Okay? And then finally, the last problem caused by inflation, which we'll go over in more detail in a couple more videos, is the effects that it has on borrowing. So lending and borrowing costs. Okay, so let me give you an example. Suppose you have a friend who says, you know, I need to borrow $1 from you, and I'll pay you $2 when I have the money. And probably being a good friend, you say, okay, here's $1. Pay me back when you have the chance, $2. Okay, so you lend it out $1. Now, what happens if your friend doesn't pay you back for 10 years? Well, after 10 years, you get your $2, but maybe with that $2, you couldn't even buy what you could have bought today with that $1. So you postpone consumption by giving away $1. So whatever I could have bought with that $1 is what I'm forfeiting to lend out that $1. And then in the future, I get that $2 back, and I can't buy the exact same thing which I could have bought with the $1 when I lended it out. Okay, and that can happen because of inflation. Okay, so lending and borrowing costs are really altered because of inflation, and it plays a lot of havoc. And we're going to go into a lot more detail about interest rates and these costs associated with lending and borrowing. But because it's a method of deferred payment, I'm foregoing consumption to lend today. When I get the money back, I may decide that that was a bad investment. Okay, so overall, there's a lot of problems caused by inflation. We really want to understand, when we look at those numbers, it's very important to understand what inflation is, how we calculate it, and what these problems are, because they affect all of us.